Good morning to all. Today in this video, we are going to discuss about four concepts. First one, web app interface design. Second one, aesthetic design. Third one, content design. Fourth one, architecture design. Among these, the first one, web app interface design. Web app interface design means you already know what is meant by web app. Web app means nothing but web application which is run on the basis of by using internet. To interact with such type of web application, we must require an interface. How we need to develop such interface or design such interface is our concept called web app interface design. So to develop a web app interface design, we have some objectives. Those objectives of web app interfaces are: first one, establish a consistent window into the content and functionality providing by the interface. Then second one, guide the user to a series of interactions with the web application. Third one, organize the interaction options and content availability to the user. So these are the three basic objectives of web app interface designing. So in that, the first one, establish a consistent window means when you are developing an interface design for web application, that interface must be consistent. It may not create any confusion to the user while they are using. So when you are establishing the interface, it must be a consistent one based on the content what you are represented in that and based on the functionalities what you are provided to that interface. So whenever you are designing the interface, it must a consistent one. That is the first objective. Then second objective is guide the user to a series of interactions with the web applications. That means whenever the user using the web application is series he have continuous interaction with the web applications. So when you are doing such type of interactions with the web applications, the interface wants to guide the user how to use the different options which are represented in the web application. So it must act as a guide to the user. That is the second objective of web app interface. Then third one is organize the navigation options and content availability to the user. That means whenever you are using the web app interface, there we have number of navigation options to organize the content availability. That means we are moving from one page to another page for gathering different information and different availability of content gathering the user can using. So the third objective is organize the navigation options. So these are the three different objectives are available for web app interface designing. So in these, the third concept is organize the navigation options. So to implement these navigation options, you may select any one from a number of interaction mechanisms are there for navigation options. So those interaction mechanisms are broadly classified as navigation menus, graphic icons, graphic images. So come to the first one, first mechanism, navigation menus. Navigation menus means a hierarchy of top subtopics is displayed when primary menu is selected. For example, come to the point of come to an example, nothing but if you take a MS Office Word, in that if you select a file is a primary menu. If you selected that primary menu of file, that subtopics are displayed. Hierarchy of subtopics are displayed. If you selected any one of that, you can move from there to into that window. So such type of navigation is nothing but navigation menu. Hierarchy of subtopics is displayed when primary menu is selected. That is the first navigation option. The second navigation option is graphic icons. You know what is meant by icons? A button or a switch or any similar graphical image icons may be given. If you click on that icon, it moves to from one place to another place to the user. Then second option is graphic images. So if you represented the menus in the form of graphical representation, if you selected that one, then it navigate the user from one place to another place. So these are the three different types of interaction mechanisms used in navigation options. So this is the concept of web app interface design. In this concept, we are mainly concentrate on objectives, three different types of objectives and three different types of navigation options. Then the next design is aesthetic design. So aesthetic design also called as graphic design. So here in aesthetic design, what is meant by aesthetic means the beauty exists in the eye of the behold. That means aesthetic means uh, good looking, beautiful is the meaning of aesthetic. That means when you develop a web application, so it must look beautifully. So to provide such a good look to the web applications, so what are the things we need to follow. So if you develop in such a manner, then that design it will be called as aesthetic design. So in web application development, aesthetic design is more important. To represent this aesthetic design, according to our concept, we have two important points are there. One is layout issues and second one graphic design issues. Then come to the first one, layout issues. Layout issues. So layout issues are having some important issue points are there. In the first one is don't be afraid of white spaces. That means when you are developing your web applications, some white spaces are there. We may not fill the total web application by content. Some white spaces may be leave blankly. We may not afraid of such type of web application. That is the first layout issue. Then second one is emphasize the content. Emphasize the content means when you're developing the web application, you must fill that web application page fully by content, mostly with content. That means 80% of the web application may be filled by content and only 20% may be used for any graphical representation or any other special features. That is your second one, nothing but emphasize content. Then third one is organize the layout element from top left to bottom right. That means whenever you are representing your web application, if you provide a good look to your web application is you must represent anything from top left side to bottom right side. Why? Because means it is human nature. Whenever a human wants to go through anything means compulsory he first to go starting point of the top left. From there to he moves gradually and comes to the bottom right. So that's why when you are organizing your elements in the web application, you must organize those elements from top left to bottom right. Then this is your third one. Then fourth one is group navigation, content and functions geographically within the page. That means whatever the navigations you are doing and whatever the content you are representing and what are the functions you are using in your web application, they are graphically, geographically within that web application only. You may not go out of anywhere. So all the things must be represented based on that web app only. Then that is your fourth one. The fifth one is don't extend your real estate with the scroll bar. That means whenever you are representing the content data in your web application, you must represent by a single view. So user may not like to use scroll bars to scroll that one and then view what is the data present in the down of the web page. So if you have lot of data, provide number of web pages, placed in number of web pages. Don't dump large amount of data in a single web applications. If you dump large amount of data in a single web application, single page, scroll bars are compulsory required. User may not shown more interest when scrolling the bar and view the data. So that's why don't extend use the scroll bars. So if you have large data, use number of pages. So avoid using scroll bars by the users. Then last one is consider resolution and browser window size when designing layouts. So whenever you are designing the web application, web applications layouts, so please consider the resolution of the systems and what are the browsers are using by the user to open these web applications. Those window size also wants to consider. So these are the six different types of layout issues must be followed strictly when you are designing your web application, and if it wants to look aesthetic look must be provided means you want to follow all these things. If you follow these things, then your web application are designed on the basis of aesthetic design manner. Then the second point is graphic design issues. Graphic design means if your web application you are designing, in that you must represent graphical manner. So the web application must be designed on the basis of graphical manner. So a graphic design consider every aspect of look and feel of a web application. So if you develop your web application on the basis of graphically, it provide a good look and good feel of your web application while seeing. So this is the concept, nothing but aesthetic design. Then third one is content design. So content design means when you are developing your web application, you are representing the data in that. The data here we are saying as content. What is the data is you are representing there. That one we are representing here as a content. How that content you are representing in your web application, that is comes under content designing. So content designing mainly focuses on two different tasks, two different design tasks, and each task addresses individually with the different skill sets. That means the content design may have two different design tasks. Each task addresses individually different skill sets. So what the first design task is nothing but when you are representing the content design, it may represent it in the form of content objects and the mechanism required to establish a relationship to one another in development. In addition, the information within a specific content object is created. It means the first design task is when you are designing the web application, in that the content design is nothing but you are representing the design in the form of content objects. That means you may not represent the data in different manners. So you are representing the data in the web application in the form of content objects. That means, for example, if you take purchase information, you want to represent, you want to place all the purchase information in the purchase object only. And if you want to represent the sales data, you represent all the sales data in sales object only. Some other places the sales data may not be available. The sales data available only in sales objectives. So those purchase objective and sales objective here we are saying as content objects. So those objects may contain information. Content is there. So those content how you are representing and how you are establishing the relationship between one another from one content object to another content object, how you are establishing the relationship. So this is your first design task. That means how you are representing the content object and how you are representing what is the mechanism you are using to establish the relationship between the two content objects. In addition with the information specified in the content object is created. So that is your first design task. Then the second design task is nothing but may be conducted by copyrights who designed and graphic designers and others who generated the content to be used within the web application. That means whose information, if you develop your web application means your own data wants to represent that, then you may get the copyright of the content what you placed within that application or what you used in that application. So getting copyright is the second task. So these are the two different tasks you want to focus in the content designing. Then when you come to the content design, it may contain two important concepts. Those are nothing but content object and content design issues. Content objects we already discussed. Content objects as an attributes that includes content specific information. That means content object means contain some information related to that object. Then content design means when you are designing the content also, you must use aesthetic design. So in that manner, if you design your content objects, then it may represent proper look and feel of the content. So this is nothing but content designing. That is in a web application, how you are representing your content is nothing but content designing. Then the next concept is, so this is nothing but design of content objects. Then the next concept is architecture design. Architecture design means how to develop a web application. So what is the architecture we have, how to design that architecture is nothing but architecture designing, because without having a structure we cannot develop anything. For web application developments also we need a structure. That structure here we are saying as architecture. How we are developing that structure is nothing but architecture designing. Basically, the architecture designing contain two types of architectures. Those are nothing but first one content architecture and second one web app architecture. So first one, content architecture. Content architecture mainly focuses on the manner in which content objects are structured for presentations and navigations. So the content architecture mainly focuses on content objects and how they are structured, how we are presenting them, how we are navigating from one object to another object. So all these things are mainly focused on content architecture. Then second architecture is a web app architecture. Web app architecture addresses the manner in which the application is structured to maintain user interactions, handle internal processing tasks, effective navigation, and present content. So the second architecture, web app architecture, addresses manner is mainly these architecture mainly structured to manage four things. One is user interaction, how user interact with that web application, managing that one and handling the internal processing task. And third one is effective navigation and how to present the content. So the main concept of architecture design is based in web app architecture, because it is the structure to manage all these 4 points. Then, architecture design is conducted in parallel with interface design, aesthetic design, and content design. So, whenever the interface design, aesthetic design, and content designs are performing, including to that, this architecture design is parallelly conducted. Then this architecture design may have 2 points. One is content architecture and second one is web app architecture. Then come to the first one. Content architecture means the design of content architecture mainly focuses on the definition of overall hypermedia structure of the web application. That means whenever you are developing a web application, the content architecture mainly focusing on how the content wants to represented in a hypermedia structured formats. And although we have some custom architectures are also created in some time to represent such type of custom architecture, we have four different types of content structures are there. So when you want to represent the content in the web application, we have four different types of content structures are there. They are linear structure, then second one grid structure, hierarchical structures, and network or pure web structures. So I can explain these structures in a diagrammatic representation. So these are the four different types of content architecture. So one is linear architecture, grid structure architecture, then network structures and hierarchical structures. Then if you come to the first content architecture, linear structure means this structure represented in a linear format. Linear means one by one. If you are represented your content, then that one comes under linear structure. Then if you come to the grid structure means, grid means nothing but arranged in a side by side. For example, if you take a Excel, MS Office Excel sheet, so there the cells are arranged by one manner. In the same manner, if you arranged your content also, then such type of architecture will comes under grid structure. grid structure. Then if you come to the network structure, that nothing but these types of structure we already saw in computer networks, mesh architecture. So such type of structure is there for representing the content. Such architecture will comes under network structures. Then if you come to the fourth one is hierarchical structure. Hierarchical structure. For this, an example is in your data structures, you have tree structured format, a hierarchical formatted one by one. So such type of architecture will be called as hierarchical structure. So these are the four different types of structures are available to represent content architecture. Then the second point is WebApp architecture. WebApp architectures may also represent as MVC architecture also. Here M means model and V means view, and M means model and V means view and C means controller. So three concepts are there. That's why we are represented the starting letters also the name of this architecture. So here the first one model contain all specific contents and processing logics. So the model contains all specific contents and processing logics. That means all content objects are there and accessing the external data, information sources also, all processing functionalities that are applicable specifically in the model area. Then if you come to the second area is view. View contains all interface specific objects and enables, that means presentation of content and processing logics, access of external data and information view, and all processing functionality required by the end user. So then third one is controller. So controller module manage the access to the model and the view and coordinate the flow of data between them. So in MVC architecture we have three model. One is model, view, and controller. Model contains all specific content and processing logics. View contains all interface specific functions, and controller manages the access of model and view and coordinate the flow of data between them. So I can explain this MVC architecture in the diagrammatic manner. So this is nothing but the diagrammatic representation of MVC architecture. For example, a user wants to request anything from the server means, so the user requesting through browser in the client side. So that user request from browser is directly sent to the controller in the server. So controller process the data. Why? Because means controller have the control on model and view. So controller specify the way where the data wants to pass. So if you want to process anything, the data will directly send to the model. So in the model, it is processed. Why? Because model have the ability to process the logics. When process, then it will access the data from the external database. After gather the data for the requirement of sent by the controller, then that one will send to the viewer. Then in the viewer, it sends the data back to the browser for the view representation to the user. If any request sent to the controller, it directly wants to view the data means it may not send to the model, because only for view it may not have any processing logic, so it directly sends that request to view. Even though the view next is sent to the model and gather the data from the external, and again it back to model. Model sends the data to view and then it sends the data to browser. In this manner, the MVC architecture is processing. So this is the concept of MVC architecture. So here today we discuss these four concepts. Those are nothing but the first one web app interface design, the second one aesthetic design, and third one content design, and the last one is architecture design. Based on these four concepts, here I given some assignment questions. So these are the five different types of assignment questions based on those concepts. Thank you.